people like us who are willing to take on challenges, who see that like, hey, this system's broken. It could be better this way. Well, that's it's good to be able to see that, but then what are you going to do about it? And that's where entrepreneurialism comes into play.
Something that I've noticed about almost any bureaucratic system, whether it's the school system, the political system, these systems are not built for change. And we live in a world now where it's so far ahead of the times back when the political system, the education system were created, right? That they just don't keep up. Now, in spite of that, though, the medical system, the medical establishment does seem to try and keep up, right? Because that's where you see lots of advancements. They're not afraid of bringing AI into the picture. You see lots of like facilities and different protocols being tested. Almost any social, almost any influence book you'd read about different social experiments conducted to find out how people behave and stuff. Like there's always at least a couple of experiments that took place in hospitals or universities that are located next to hospitals, patients of all kinds. So it's like, I would love it if the political system and the education system would be more like that, where they would allow more experiments, because ChatGPT comes out, instead of celebrating it and all the progress we can make as a species, the school system immediately bans it. Just because I tried installing it on my daughter's Chromebook, and
Yeah.
it just won't let me, right? But think about it, you can use it as a tool. They see it as a gun that's gonna kill them, but a gun can be used for self-protection. A gun can be used for hunting if you live in the woods. Probably makes it much easier to kill a big animal than trying to chase it down with a pocket knife or something. So
Right.
they're so busy trying to preserve themselves that they just block almost any change imaginable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like self-preservation, right? Uh, Rather than evolution. It's how do we preserve our position and our power and our source of income, which is a very natural like result, but it doesn't serve like the furtherance of the broader good. And that's where I do think like guys, you know uh, like us, entrepreneurs, not just guys obviously, but people like us who are willing to take on challenges, who see that like, hey, this system's broken. It could be better this way. Well, that's it's good to be able to see that, but then what are you going to do about it? And that's where entrepreneurialism comes into play. And you know we homeschool, and we have for 11 years now, because I recognize the fact that the educational system was one. It's largely an indoctrination system. It's teaching them what to believe rather than how to find truth. It's not teaching critical thinking. It's not teaching rhetoric and logic. It's not teaching all these skills. It's not teaching financial literacy. It's not teaching entrepreneurialism. Like there's all these things that are lacking, and then all the things that are included are detrimental. And so we we have our kids work in the business, doing some of the tasks, and actually you've possibly interacted with them without necessarily even knowing it. I don't know if so much if you have, but we've done some, like we get them to do some of the repetitive, like
Oh yeah.
outreach and follow up and stuff like that, so they can see what goes into actually running a business. And they ask questions that adults, not even adults would think to ask, but that like other entrepreneurs would ask, like about financing for projects and things like that. And so for all those reasons, like we chose to educate them ourselves. And we actually have them embracing Chat GPT. And I've got other entrepreneurial minded friends, and some people I should probably put you in touch with, actually, who are also, maybe even if their kids are in school, they're teaching them these other things. They're like having them use artificial intelligence, like having them play around with crypto, and coding, trading bots, and things like that. Like all these things that are actual life skills and money making skills that are just left out of school. So, I think we had that going on. There's this. I can't figure out if it's like conspiracy or just like ineptitude. Like if these people are like really evil or if they're just dumb. Um, because we have this like whole feedback loop where like people aren't being taught these skills that would allow them to create a business around solving a problem. And so there's like this loop where we don't give people what they need to think for themselves, to solve problems, to make money, and to make money by solving problems. And the only way that I could see to break out of it was to homeschool my kids. But just like you, like we're the product of jumping outside of that system. Like everything that I know as an entrepreneur, I learned from a home study course. Like I bought a course in the beginning. I like downloaded bootleg copies of marketing courses and things like
Same,
that.
same.
Yeah, because I was broke, bro. I was living in the hood. Like I didn't have any money to
Exactly,
buy a
dude. I was
course.
living in the hood in Israel, so the exchange rate, like when Frank Kern came out with Mass Control 2.0 for
Yeah,
2 grand or something, I was like, oh my god. So I went on a torrent website. I found it. There was like a big torrent website with lots of educational courses.
yeah, dude.
Right? I don't recall what it was called, but I
Was it
downloaded all of
Biz
them.
BizTorrent Biz?
Maybe BizTorrent, maybe,
I
maybe.
think that's the one I got a bunch on because I was in the
Man,
same
that was
thing,
amazing.
dude.
Whoever uploaded all that stuff, oh man, thank you so much. You changed my life. You know what? Later, I actually, just before I got recruited into the Israeli army, I
Yeah,
had to enlist because I graduated an Air Force Academy, so I didn't
yeah,
really have a choice. Just before I went there, I had like a year in between, and I was like, man, I need to succeed before I enlist, before I enlist. So I found one of Frank Kern's dog training websites and I wrote him a snail. I found the address, La Jolla, California, something, and I sent him a snail mail letter asking for help. And I was like, dude, I'm a big fan of yours. I got Mass Control off of a torrent website. I'm so sorry. Once I make money, when I make money, I'll pay you for it.
that's awesome.
But you're so amazing. Can you help me? I really need to succeed. I'm about to get enlisted. And he actually, his assistant emailed me about a month later with a login details to a membership site that he put together where he was
Wow.
teaching how to build a list. And the lesson was, the whole idea was, he was teaching you how to buy an ad, so, and how to do the money math, so you knew what was your cost per lead, so you can
Right.
then scale and promote. So that in and of itself was not a life changing experience, but it did put me on the right track because I ended up succeeding as a result of buying ads and building lists. So, um, but yeah, torrent websites, bootleg copies, and everything, man. Yeah. I think the reason why the education system doesn't really want for everyone to become an entrepreneur because they need drones, kind of like the Matrix, where humans are batteries. They need people to be that way. Otherwise, they can't build a society where a handful of people are kind of building their wealth and empire on the backs of millions.
Exactly. No, you nailed it, man. That's exactly it. And I've always felt like that model in itself is broken. Like it doesn't have to be that way. Like we can all, like the world, like food, like there's no reason for anyone on this planet to be starved. Like we could use like actually more traditional, less labor intensive, less, chemical and machinery driven forms of agriculture could use 4% of the space that we currently use to produce the same amount of food with a far higher nutrient density and all kinds of things. So like, permaculture, agroforestry, like, and by strategically locating that close to population centers, we could, there's things that we could do. The world wants to be abundant if we would just like steward it well. And there's so much available, and because of the way we're wired and we work, like we can create more abundance out of beyond just natural resources, but we can create economies and these structures and systems within which we work with each other. And we don't have to have this kind of like, rulers at the top and the slave class beneath them. Like we can, we're always going to have some sort of like decision making mechanism and have to have some way of making rules for each other. But this goes back to DAOs, which I talked about in Uncensored Crypto, the decentralized autonomous organization. Like that to me represents a structure in which we can experiment on governance and what governance models could be used at a societal level, and we can do it in a business context. And I think that that's where, another thing that inspired me to make Uncensored Crypto is that this Web3 model of governance is really just as disruptive as the technology is. And so, I do think, and I hope that we're able to adopt some of these things and that we're able to evolve beyond like these 100, centuries or millennia old models that, they're just outdated. um, and that we can create a better society where people have more autonomy, where we don't have to like try to shove everybody into these here's your little worker drone hexagon, like fit in the box and do what you're told, but people can have you know abundance and freedom. It's certainly possible, but there are the established powers that be that like that doesn't serve their vision of their future. They're protectionist. They're worried that they're going to lose out, and I don't know, man. I'm hopeful, but also like somewhat skeptical that we can achieve those kind of ideals. But I still feel like it's something we got to fight for.
Well, I think in time. I grew up in Israel, so I got to see this Israeli Palestinian conflict, right? And it plays out not just at the border; it plays out in between, the city limits too,
Yeah,
because there's lots
yeah,
of Arabs living like in between. They're settling in between the different Israeli towns and cities and villages. So you have to interact with each other, right? And what I think is, the way you overcome these is the next generation comes, and you teach the next generation early on about what's right, what's wrong, because the generations that already grew up and they already know what's right, what's wrong. It's next thing. It's like asking them to chop off their feet, like
yeah,
to
yeah.
get rid of
Right.
an idea. It's so like in their DNA, kind of like it just, you can't expect them to change. But the more generations grow up with the access to the internet, the more generations grow up with ability to understand multiple languages, the more generations grow up with the access to decentralized technology, whether it's within the crypto space or within any other space. I think the more we will evolve and get rid of these old notions. I think, because it requires, for someone who was born into being a drone, to escape that requires like lots of reconditioning, and you can do it early on before they turn like 30 probably, but after, very difficult. They really have to have that desire within to want to change, but most people don't want to change. They really don't. um Look, it's been a tremendous pleasure chatting with you today. We touched on some really cool stuff, some really deep, conversations. I really appreciate it. I'm definitely open and welcome you to come on the show more often to talk about your projects and your vision. Now, if someone's listening to this, if they wanted to go and check out some of the stuff you worked on and were a part of in the past or right now, what projects should they be looking up?
Yeah. So, there's uncensored crypto, there's six figure side hustles. But what I would say is maybe just check out michaelhearnelive.com, and that should link out to any projects that I have. So, I know not everybody's going to hear this immediately. So at any point in time at michaelhearnelive.com, there will be links out to my different projects that I've got going on.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna make sure to link in the show description. So if you're listening on a podcast platform like Spotify, go ahead and visit listbuildinglifestyleshow.com, and we'll have the links at the bottom of this episode page. Michael, once again, thank you for spending this time with me, especially in the middle of a launch. And
Yeah.
always feel free to come back to the show. Great conversation, and until next time we chat, have a good one.
Thanks, Igor. Appreciate it, man.